There's a phrase, don't hate the player, hate the game. And it's a little bit of a 90s vibe, but what it means is don't hate the individuals involved in a situation, hate the system that creates a scenario where certain kind of things can happen because you have to change the system. People are going to be people. So I want to talk about that in the context of these controversies that are going on at these legacy newspaper companies, the Washington Post, the LA Times, these owners, these business elites, these investors, these people who own newspapers as personal pet business projects, and how they are stifling editorials. And I'm going to talk about what that means, what that is, how to react, not to react. But first, please hit subscribe on YouTube and also visit SantaBarbaraTalks.com and consider making a contribution to support these podcasts. So the LA Times, Washington Post, they're the latest legacy media companies to let us down, if you will. Washington Post owner Jeff Bezos killed an editorial in favor of presidential candidate Kamala Harris. And LA Times owner Patrick Zhang also killed an editorial in the LA Times. So in both of these situations, these editorials were in support of a specific candidate. They were in support of Kamala Harris. But make no mistake about it, owners killing editorials or blocking editorials is a horrible idea, no matter who the candidate is. And I know that a lot of liberals are jumping on this and, saying that, this is the defining moment in our history and you have to come out strong against Trump. I'm saying that anytime you have a publisher who is intervening and stopping the work that journalists were hired to do, that's a problem, and that applies both ways. A lot of these political conservatives, they're portraying the situation as, oh, the liberal media getting what it deserves, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. These business elites, okay, these people with ultimate financial power, no matter their political bent, okay, whether they're liberal or conservative, somewhere in the middle, or God forbid, libertarian, they need to stay out of the work that journalists do. Okay, they don't understand what it means to be a journalist. They don't even understand, in this case, what it means to be an editorial page writer. So they need to stay away. Conservatives cheering the blocking of these editorials because it possibly benefits their candidate. There's no way with a straight face that any of you would be going anything but apoplectic if a newspaper owner killed an editorial that would have supported President Trump. There's no way you would be reacting the same way. So you can't have it both ways. This is an issue of principle and journalistic integrity, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum. It's not a conservative thing. It's not a liberal thing. It's an ethical thing. Okay. So why do we have editorials? Because newspapers and legitimate media outlets are often the most positioned to inform the public. Their staff, the reporters, the photographers, the people who are on the front lines gathering news, gathering information, they report and they write the stories. They're the most informed on a topic on the ground because they're doing the reporting and developing the expertise in the moment very quickly, and then informing and educating the public. And then from there, editorial writers, editorial department rooms, they read the content, they read the coverage, they are informed, and then they make endorsements based off of that fact-based reporting. It's a separate wall, right? You have people in the newsroom, and then you have editorial writers. The two shall not mix, okay? And in pure newsrooms, they don't, right? Editorial writers, they write editorials. News reporters write stories. So news reporters should not be expressing their views in editorials, and they really shouldn't even be lobbying for that. They should be letting their reporting stand. And that's what happens. So when an editorial writer for one of these big organizations, the editorial team, they get together and they are consumers of all of this news that's been reported. And then they're the most positioned to make a smart, informed recommendation to their audience. Okay. Now more than ever, we need endorsements to shine a light on what's happening in this country, in this world. We need to shine a spotlight on candidates who choose to spend taxpayer dollars, who make political decisions that affect our lives. You know, internet is a fascinating place. There's so many places to get information, right? When I was growing up, it was like the encyclopedias or the Britannica, and then early in life we get the internet, and it's all these doors open, and now it's just so much so we have so much access to information. I can go on YouTube and I can get caught in a rabbit hole. I can watch Neil deGrasse Tyson explain the universe to me, and I could feel like, wow, I'm an expert on this stuff. I don't even need to know anything else. I just watch this hour-long video. Okay. I watch everything. I could watch these alternative history people on Joe Rogan or something talking about who really invented the pyramids. Everything, right? It's easy to feel smart, informed, and educated by going on the internet, watching YouTube videos. A lot of it is entertaining, but it's kind of just everything is out there. Okay. That's a fun experience, but that's very different than having editorial writers offer their analysis, their expertise, their understanding of a situation, and then make an informed endorsement of, in this case, a presidential candidate based on the facts. Like we like experts. We like people who are knowledgeable on specific things to offer us information. Okay. It's not a weird thing. It's not a wild thing. In this era of AI generated news, deep fakes, fake news, we need experts, strong editorials to make recommendations on what we should do, how we should vote, how we should understand a situation. Most people don't have the time in their lives to understand all this stuff on their own. So they rely on the people whose job it is to report and understand that. Okay. And so editorials are important, but when these big business investors or billionaires, these business executives, when they start blocking editorials, it hurts everybody. Okay. It's an act that hurts everybody, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum. Everyday voters are hungry and thirsty for information that explains what is happening. It's not enough, and a lot of journalists are this way, and it takes a few years before a lot of times they figure it out. Some never figure it out, but it's not enough for a newspaper reporter to just explain the color of the paint on the wall, if you will. It's the job of the journalist to offer that news peg, that nut graph, and explain why the color of the paint is on that wall, to explain why, the behind the scenes, how we got here. And editorial writers are also fulfilling that job. They take that information, put it in context, and explain why it's happening. Because without that, who benefits? Okay. Just the people in power, people with the most information, the people who have access to anything they want. They benefit from a lack of analysis, a lack of understanding, a lack of expertise and information because they already have everything that they want. And they may probably not want to share that information with other people. Bezos is the most outrageous of these two recent scenarios. This is a guy whose successful business enterprises have helped kill bookstores, retail shops, a variety of other peripheral industries. Never mind the working conditions at these warehouses and distribution centers, as well as the drivers who have these quotas to rapidly deliver a lot of things throughout the day to sort of feed the need for us as a country, our convenience. Okay. This guy should not be owning a newspaper. Okay. He doesn't need it, and he doesn't understand the whole purpose and the point. And if he does, okay, stay out of it. Like, same with the LA Times owner. Stay out of it. Let the people who do their jobs, who have these journalism jobs, let them do it, and don't tell them that you know better. That's insanity. It's ridiculous. And another thing about this is I don't really care how smart you are. I don't care how smart you think you are. I don't care if you're smarter than me or smarter than newspaper editor, right? It doesn't matter how much money you have or how much influence you have or how many degrees you have or whether you're an engineer or aerospace expert, right? All these, things that, unfortunately we tend to define as smart, like these sciences or something, is that's the only kind of smart, right? I don't care in your world how brilliant you think you are. Good for you. Unless you've worked as a nuts and bolts reporter on the ground in the field, you don't understand journalism, right? You just don't. There's no way you understand it by theory, okay, or even just consuming a lot of it. That's why we have journalists report and write, right? The smartest person on the planet, unless they've had the training, right? They can't just figure something out spontaneously. They're not going to go figure out how to build an engine or replace an engine or, even change spark plugs on a car, no matter how smart they are, because they would need training. They would need some understanding, some expertise. So why do we think that people who have no real training or experience in journalism would know how it works? They don't. You don't. Okay. And this is true everywhere, whether you have a lot of money or not, whether you're a CEO or an activist or elected official or any of these people that we encounter on a daily basis. If you haven't had to spend like a couple of years in the trenches, figuring out what it's like to inform, educate, report, explain, and do it in the face of adversity, because people don't want to talk to you. People don't like journalists. People like journalists if you're writing about something that benefits them. The second you're writing about something that does not benefit them, they climb up. They don't. Their journalism, ethics go away. Their understanding of it. So it's hard to be able to report all of this information in the face of adversity. And so people consume mass media and they think they have some expertise on it. And you may have expertise from a consumption point of view, but not in the creation point of view. And as for these journalists, right, the ones who've resigned over these editorials or lack of them, it takes courage, right? It's not easy to give up a job on principle. And these people, they had to do it. These editorial page writers, most people would not do that. They can't do that. You might recall all the people who resigned at the news press in 2006. Okay. It was a massive thing, documentary. There's stories about it all the time. This new generation of people who are trying to do things in Santa Barbara. Unfortunately, they don't have access to the whole archives of the news press history. So you can't go look back at all that. And you can look at some of these other outlets where there are some stories there, but that history is just like non-existent. Like the whole history of the news press is non-existent on the internet, where every other organization it is. So you may not have that understanding, but dozens of people resigned from the news press because of this specific issue, because of influence from an editorial, in that case, into the newsroom. But before that, even into the editorial pages, right? I did not resign that immediate day. I was actually on vacation that week. Thankfully or not thankfully, I don't know. I did not hear the big fight in the newsroom. I wasn't there. And this would have been 2006. So not everybody had an iPhone, if anyone had an iPhone. So it wasn't like viral where everyone was sending it around. I probably would have resigned that day had I been in the newsroom and witnessed all that. I left 3 weeks later. Okay. And haven't been the same ever since. Struggled financially. My son was 1 year old at the time. When I resigned, I took a job at the San Jose Mercury News. And although that was the best job I ever had financially, one job to make a lot of money, as opposed to the 3 jobs I have now to make about the same amount of money that I was making from 2006 to 2008 in the media market. But it was tough because my son was 1 and I was away from him for 2.5 years. And That's the decisions that all these journalists have to make, depending on where they're at in their careers, when they decide, oh, yeah, great job, bye, on principle, on ethics. These journalists are courageous, okay? They're heroes because they're giving up something not only that pays them, but that they love and they believe in, that they're principled in, okay? Think about that. Would you do that today if something happened at your organization, your workplace, or would you just look the other way and be sorry and keep doing your job? Okay. Most people would take that path. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to recognize those who don't, and they are heroic. And I just want to like mention this point about all these people who are canceling their subscriptions to the Washington Post or the LA Times. Don't do that, right? That doesn't help anything. It does not help anyone. It's certainly not going to hurt Jeff Bezos, right? Jeff Bezos doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the Washington Post. But when advertisers pull their money away, when people cancel their subscriptions, the only thing that hurts, the only people that hurt are these nuts and bolts reporters in the trenches, these editorial writers, these people who are actually, trying to document the first draft of history on a daily basis. And again, in the face of people who often don't want to talk to them unless they believe a specific story benefits them or their cause. Okay. This only hurts the craft of journalism when you cancel your subscriptions. Okay. So don't do that, right? I began this with the player and the game. Like, don't hurt the players. Players are just doing what they do best. It's the game that's the problem. And it's the fact that we as a country let our news media organizations get to a point where these big rich people buy them and then they don't understand what a role of a newspaper is, and then they get involved and it all gets all messed up, and then the whole thing's blurred, and then people like President Trump can go around saying fake news, because everything's all muddled. All right. So don't hurt the actual craft of the journalist who are actually trying to do their job. And just I want to address one more thing. It's not technically censorship, okay? The First Amendment allows the publisher. It's exactly why it exists, or it's exactly the definition of the First Amendment, which is it allows free speech. It allows the publisher to print or not print whatever they want, okay? But it's a total abdication of their journalistic responsibility to say we're not going to do an editorial, to not endorse when you historically endorse. If you've never endorsed and it's never been your deal, and there are some news organizations that do this, that's a different situation. But if you regularly endorse and you create a routine and a situation and an expectation that your news organization is going to be taking stands based on the work product of your reporters, and then you decide, well, no, we're going to stop, we're going to change it right before the election. That's embarrassing and that's shameful, and that's nothing more than just a terrible act without any transparency, because everyone can see through that, right? Um, the publisher has a right to publish whatever they want, right? I don't have a right to publish on someone else's platform, but I have a right to publish on my platform, and the newspapers have a right to publish on theirs. So it's not censorship, but what it is just an abdication of their responsibilities. If you're in the business of trust, if you're in the business of informing people, well, this is a way of informing people. And this is why you can't have non-journalists making decisions about what happens in a newsroom, or in this case, an editorial room. And by the way, these owners who are trying to stifle the information, it probably backfired, because now a lot more people know about these editorials than they would have had they just come out and endorsed Harris. Okay. No one would have been surprised if the Washington Post and the LA Times endorsed Kamala Harris. Like, everyone would have been like, yeah, that's totally expected, and moved on with their day. Now you don't do it, and it draws all this attention and everybody's talking about it. And guess what? That only helps the thing, presumably, these publishers didn't want. It helps Harris, because now everyone has a greater amount of awareness, and there's the people who would have voted for her anyway, and then there's the people in the middle who were maybe undecided or not sure. They're going to be totally motivated, because now, like, there's these characters involved, right? Oh, they had their editorial in favor of Harris stifled. no, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to vote for her. So they've created this whole sort of group of people now who are very enthusiastic Harris supporters. So killing those editorials did not work. Okay. We need a world where newspapers are making endorsements and offering their informed, educated expertise on a topic. Now, how much effect do they have? Who knows? Okay. They do have some effect, right? Some people, especially like in this town and small towns, editorials make a huge difference, right? Because people are very busy. They don't understand the school board candidate or the city council candidate. Like, oh, there's a slate. Let me go with that. They certainly make a difference in small communities. Okay. If you endorse, it's a big deal. If you don't endorse, right? If you don't get the endorsement, it definitely hurts. Okay. So by scales of magnitude, how impactful is it? We don't know, but undoubtedly there are people who would have read the Washington Post, read the LA Times, saw the endorsement, and maybe it was never a thing between them and Trump, but maybe in this case it's between Harris and Jill Stein or some third party candidate. And now they're like, oh, I get it. But now that form of education just doesn't exist. Okay. So we need to do them. How influential are they? They are a little bit influential. We still have them. People still turn to the newspaper for credibility, right? Anytime you watch a movie and they want to get serious and they want to like flashback or show something's gotten real, always the newspaper headline they go to, okay? They don't go to a YouTube video. They go to the newspaper headline. Something big happened. And that's the case in this world. So we want newspapers making editorials because whether you're conservative or liberal or anywhere else, um, public has a right to know what these organizations, these editorial writers, these organizations feel, and then people can make up their own mind. It's not like people are automatically going to vote that way anyway. And some people will just automatically vote the opposite. A world without endorsements, only the most powerful people in society benefit from that scenario. The working class, the poor, working families, who, by the way, are most people in this country, they're the ones who suffer when those with massive power aren't challenged. Okay. They are the ones who suffer because people with power and people who have everything that they need today, they don't really care what the newspaper is doing. It's people who lack access at the table. It's people who don't have the same access to information. It's people who have historically not been included in the conversation when it comes to policy, when it comes to decision making. Those are the people that need the information because without that, the gaps just grow between the wealthy and the poor. And so those editorials are super essential. Okay. Without it, we're left with these CEOs, these billionaires, these elected officials, all these people with power to tell their own stories through their own narratives, through their own public relations machines. And that's not good for anyone, whether they're conservative, liberal, or any other political affiliation. So don't cancel your subscriptions to these news organizations and support the journalists. And we need to somehow figure out a way to fix this business model because we cannot have people who don't understand journalism making decisions about what journalism looks like. Hit subscribe, visit SantaBarbaraTalks.com. Have a great day. Thank you.